from the blackest corners of your mind, they call, pulling you deep into shadow, twisting your senses, keeping you from sleep. It's time to face your darkest fears. This is Tales to Terrify. Good evening, children of the night, and welcome. Before we dive into tonight's delights, I wanted to let you know that the latest installment of our author interview series, hosted by our managing editor Seth Williams, will be hitting the feed for patrons sometime this weekend. This month, Seth pries into the mysterious mind of regular contributor Rami Ungar. Visit patreon.com/Tales to Terrify to sign up and check it out. And even if you're not a Patreon member, I highly recommend checking out Rami's latest dreadful creation, Symphony of Walpurgis. What's the difference between humans and monsters? In this collection full of cryptids, malevolent spirits, and even a Jewish exorcism, Rami Ungar explores that question through 9 novelettes of the dark and the macabre. So grab your tickets and welcome to Symphony for Walpurgis. You can pick up your copy today wherever you buy your books, links are in the show notes, or if you join us on Patreon, you'll have the chance to win a copy of your very own. To enter, simply keep your eye on our Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/Tales to Terrify. This evening, we have a handful of terrifying tidbits on the menu. 5 bite-sized morsels of the macabre to satisfy even the most ravenous of dark appetites. Are you hungry? I know I am. Let's dig in. Our first tiny terror comes to us from A.V. Greene. A.V. Greene is a writer living in the Ozarks with her family and a collection of carnivorous flora and fauna. Her work has appeared in Apex, Uncharted, and elsewhere. For more, visit avgreene.com or follow her on Bluesky and Instagram at avgreenwrites. Children of the night, join me for A.V. Greene's Home Maintenance, a Tales to Terrify original.
We're going to fix the place up as soon as we have some time. There's a lot to do, we know. It just got away from us. You know how it is. But one of these days we'll power wash all the cobwebs, grime, and mildew off the exterior. We'll clear out the weeds and dead landscaping in the front beds, cut down the dead sweet gum tree, repaint the rusted banister on the porch steps, and fix the broken light above the front door. Inside, we'll repaint. New modern colors to cover up the water-damaged ceilings and the smoke damage. We'll patch up all the holes in the dry wall, so embarrassing how many there are, and install classy slate gray vinyl floors to replace the moldy carpet. We'll get it fixed up, we will. You'll see. Yes, the kitchen needs a lot of work. We need new appliances, definitely. Everything is so outdated. Oh, don't open the refrigerator. Seriously. So many science projects in there. And we'll have to get a new electric stove to replace the gas one, It's a safety hazard, we know. We know very well. We'll fix the broken Venetian blinds, clean the cloudy windows, and do something about that smell in the basement. We don't go in the basement anymore. It's not just the house. There are other things we plan to fix too. We're talking about couples therapy. Just for a tune-up, you know? We'll start exercising and making our own juice. We've always wanted to get into urban homesteading. Maybe we'll start a compost system. That smell in the backyard. It would be great to have a real project together. We can fix it all still. It's not too late to fix it. We just need some paint, some cruelty-free animal traps, and a trip to the hardware store, and we can make this place our dream house again. It was once, you know. You can help us, right? We see you looking around, making some calculations. You can get the paint, and we'll help you decide where it goes. You can deal with the mess in the basement. We didn't mean it, not really. Until suddenly we did, and once it was halfway done, there was just so much blood, and the gas was just so much easier. You have to help us. We'll make you help us. Because for all our flaws, all our mistakes, all our negligence, make no mistake, this is our house, and we mean to take care of it. Because we have nothing but time now, and we're finally out of excuses. We can still fix it. You have to let us fix it.
That was A.V. Greene's Home Maintenance, as read by Griswold Addams. Griswold Addams is a seasoned audiobook narrator with the chilling specialty for horror. Growing up, Griswold was captivated by the eerie allure of classic slasher movies, a passion that has seamlessly transitioned his career. With a voice that can send shivers down your spine, he brings horror stories to life, making listeners feel every heartbeat and gasp. Thank you, Griswold. Our second tale tonight comes from Gordon B. White. Gordon B. White is a Seattle-based author of horror and weird fiction. His fiction has been nominated for the Shirley Jackson and Bram Stoker Awards, and his stories, reviews, and interviews have appeared in dozens of venues. His most recent book is the short story collection Gordon B. White is Creating Haunting Weird Horrors. You can find him online at gordonbwhite.com or on most social media at Gordon B. White. Listen with me, children of the night, to Gordon B. White's Plan Z, a Tales to Terrify original.
Like every modern couple, Sam and Emily had their plans for the zombie apocalypse. Years of media saturation and repressed desires crushed beneath late-stage capitalism's slow-motion apocalypse had crystallized into highly specific survival-come-power fantasies just waiting to be actualized in the impossible event that the dead began to rise up and consume the living. It was all very normal to plan for the end of the world. So, understandably, When both social media and the local news breathlessly confirmed it had started, each of them put their respective plans into motion. Sam downed his fourth beer and again checked the pistol he'd bought but never fired, assuring himself of its readiness. He took aim at the TV and grinned. Bang. Emily, for her part, stood beside the couch and continued ironing Sam's work shirt for next week, waiting for him to put the gun down. When he did, Emily picked up the iron and smashed it into the side of his head. Blow after blow, she destroyed his skull, his brain, everything. His body on the floor was a scarecrow, the jack-o'-lantern of his head sagging and hollowed. Colors that no movie had prepared her for lay in pools and chunks across the carpet. Phase 1 complete, Emily knelt down to begin the second part. She straddled the corpse and lowered herself into a position that bordered on intimate. Thighs pressed tightly against Sam for the first time in ages. She realized it might appear that a completely different kind of communion was about to occur, if one only saw them in silhouette. She lowered her lips to the once familiar curve between Sam's body's neck and shoulder, opened her mouth, and bit down hard. The skin broke, eventually. The trapezius was tougher than she had expected. Emily had to grit her teeth and tug at it before it gave way. She gagged and reeled back, struggling to her feet and pressing a hand over her dripping mouth. The kitchen sink was still full of dishes, but fortunately, she made it to the bathroom before she vomited. She didn't want a mess. Standing up from the toilet, Emily flushed the bile and blood and small ropes of Sam. She watched the last bits of her old life swirl away. Goodbye. At the sink, she stared into the mirror as if finally recognizing something behind the mask and splatter. Pulling back her lips to check her teeth for bits, it looked a little like she was smiling. Now Sam is quietly decomposing in the living room, and Emily is in the bedroom composing herself, practicing her story, and praying, the outbreak reaches them soon. Before Monday, she hopes, when Sam won't show up for work. At the very least, before neighbors can smell him. But on Emily's phone, still in the living room, calmer posts are now linking the recent violent attacks to new street drugs and media overreaction. Not zombies, of course. It's not the end of the entire world.
That was Gordon B. White's Plan Z, as read by Nicole Swanson. Nicole Swanson is an actor and producer from Augusta, Georgia, who has discovered she loves hiding away in her closet and telling stories to her loyal companion, Blackjack the studio dog. An occupational therapist in the Georgia Corrections System, when not narrating, Nicole enjoys a good cup of coffee while sitting on her porch swing and listening to the rain on a dark and stormy night. Discover more of Nicole's adventures at NicoleSwansonVO.com. Thank you, Nicole. Our third tale tonight comes from Elizabeth Ann Schwartz. Elizabeth Ann Schwartz writes sapphic fiction and poetry and loves all things dark, lyrical, and confessional. She earned her BA in creative writing at Purchase College. Her chapbook, 9 Stages of Coming Out, was released by Tiny Wren Lit. Follow her on Instagram at ElizAnnSchwa. Listen with me, children of the night, to Elizabeth Ann Schwartz's Human Woman, first published in Erato magazine, Ungar, June 2023.
Sometimes we hunt in groups, gnaw holes in the bellies of ships, or guide them into rocky terrain. We bide our time, watching the sailors writhe in the currents. Then, as water weighs down their boots and their heads slip under, lungs on fire, we drag them to shore. They wake on their backs in the wet sand, greeted by bare breasts and eyes like black pearls, fishtails pressed against their thighs. The sailors know they are prey, they are frightened, but they never deny us our pleasure. Sometimes we hunt alone, swimming in shallow waters, luring the lonely out to sea. My most precious catch was the solitary kind, a figure in a cove, crouched in the sand just out of reach of the waves, head bowed above the spine of a book, cracked wide. I glided through the water, angling for a closer look. It was a woman in a gray skirt and white blouse with rolled sleeves, chestnut hair loose around her face, cheeks red with sun. I almost ended my pursuit then and there. Men could be enticed, but human women weren't so easily charmed. They saw through us, looked on us with horror. Still, something in me whispered, "Swim closer," and I conceded. I swam until I could touch the ocean floor, tail fins stirring up sand, and still raise my head and shoulders to the sky. I saw her clearly, even the veins in her wrists, and the whites of her eyes when she lifted her head. Her face contorted, certainly, but her lips also parted, eyes widened with a fascination I knew well. She pressed the book to her chest like a shield and stood, body angled away, head turned toward me still, as if my hand were cupped under her chin, guiding her gaze. I waited, almost motionless, tail flicking below the water, hair bobbing in the swell like wet seaweed. She raised a hand to her cheek as she studied my gills, pale red slits across my cheekbones. I could hear her heart pulsing between trembling lungs as fervently as any man's, and I smiled, careful not to show my teeth. Maybe that small movement shook her from her daze. She stumbled backward on weak legs, then took off running toward the dunes and the town beyond. Her skirt billowed, hair tangled in the ocean breeze. It pained me to watch her go, but I remembered the look on her face, jaw slack, eyes enamored, and felt a heat inside, sharp and sweet as it expanded. I tipped my head back, sinking into the icy water, mouth closed, gills sifting through foam and sea salt. What was I, if not a patient creature? She returned 2 days later, as I knew she would, slinking into the cove in the red light of dawn. She had dark hollows under her eyes, like she hadn't properly closed them since seeing my face. I hung back, clinging to a rock and hiding in its shadow, and watched her search for me, first from a distance, arms crossed and chin lowered, then kneeling at the water's edge, scanning waves while the tide soaked the hem of her skirt. I made her wait, and wait, and wait, crying softly, fingers curled like claws in the wet sand. Once she was desperate, I slipped below the water and propelled myself toward her, moving soundlessly. I waited for a large wave to crest, then rode it to shore, abdomen skidding across the sand. The woman gasped at my sudden arrival, a swallowed scream, scrambling like a crab to put space between us. Though her gaze, wide, awestruck eyes, never wavered, I lifted my torso, proud head and shoulders above a rib cage lined with gills. Tender openings, raw, pink flesh so easily marred by those of sound mind. I approached her slowly, hand over hand, dragging my tail, red sunlight mirrored in my scales. Her lower lip trembled, but she made no sound, even as I inched closer so that we sat parallel, faces close, my tail curled around her like a crescent moon. I brushed a strand of hair from the sun-kissed skin above her collarbone, widening the valley in her blouse. As I angled my head, cold lips meeting her neck, she let out a cry, a small, strangled noise between pleasure and pain. With shaking fingers, she undid one button, then the next, revealing pale shoulders. My lips slid down, teeth grazing skin, as her blouse fell to her waist. Lower still, I turned my head, feeling the fullness and warmth of her breast against my mouth. I opened wider, biting down, sharp teeth tearing into veins and flesh. The woman screamed, a shriek as wild and bright as the blood seeping down my chin. Her taste filled my mouth, iron that sang against my tongue and woke the nerves in my spine. Luscious, rich, sweeter than any sailor.
That was Elizabeth Ann Schwartz's Human Woman, as read by Aven Shore. Aven Shore is an audiobook narrator, beekeeper, and friend to chickens. She lives and works from a home studio in the woods of rural Canada. Thank you, Aven. Our penultimate tale for you tonight comes to us from Allison Mulder. Physically, Allison Mulder resides in the Midwest, writing fantasy, science fiction, and horror. Figuratively, she exists somewhere in the Venn diagram of silly, scary, and sappy. She also has a frankly untenable number of hobbies. Her stories have appeared in Fireside Fiction, Escape Pod, Cast of Wonders, and more. You can find them all squirreled away at AllisonMulder.wordpress.com, though Allison herself is more easily found on Bluesky or Twitter at @AMulderWrites. Listen with me, children of the night, to Allison Mulder's Where the Demon Lives, first published on T. Gene Davis's speculative fiction blog, March 2017.
I noticed the demon living in my right index fingernail because that nail grew 10 times faster than any of the others. It yellowed and curled, my skin peeling away from it in stringy, ugly shreds, causing all my acquaintances to keep their distance. I had no closer friends to worry about. Hadn't for a while. But that wasn't exactly a comfort. I clipped the fingernail. Every day, every hour, I pressed the dull edges of my clippers flush against my red, cracked skin. I filed the nail's edges soft and covered everything in dark, smooth polish, then rubbed lotion into my stinging cuticles. The nail always grew back, faster and faster, and the people I most wanted to ignore it were always noticing, avoiding it, avoiding me. No one really knew the demon existed, of course, let alone how deeply it tainted my blood, my thoughts, my every word and action. But they all saw the place where it lived, that ugly finger, diseased, a constant suggestion of contagion. It gave everyone an excuse to stay away. I clipped the demon's fingernails so often that the edges of my clippers turned black with blood, and black with worse things, and dull with overuse, relegated to pointless nubs of metal. Dark gloves worked for a time, in winter, but indoors and in warm weather, those steered people away too. people stop trusting a handshake if they never feel the heat of your blood, your heartbeat's rewards in your hands. Or maybe my every word and action just showed more of the demon than I'd realized. It wouldn't be the first time I remained totally oblivious, right up until I'd crashed into the iceberg's tip of an extreme. I bought new clippers. Ages after I should have, I finally hooked the edge of the demon's nail and tore it free in one sharp, bloody pull. The raw, exposed nail bed sang with pain as I wrapped it in soft white gauze, and my head felt freer than it had in a long time. Relief surged through me every time I glanced at my hand and saw the nail growing back, achingly slow, but clear and healthy. I rode the bus, gloves off, clinging to a strap overhead. I watched people, noticed people, not just how they watched my hands, but how people talk and laugh and be good to each other in all the ways the demon hid from me before. At work, a new colleague offered me lotion. She dragged her palm across my knuckles, sharing her excess, rubbing in the clean, flowery scent like it was nothing, as she chattered about where to get lunch and decent coffee, her family overseas, her siblings' wedding a few weeks away. The acquaintances I made strengthened, solidified, smiled at me more in the hall. Friendships came more slowly, but then some ugly things are difficult to forget. I painted my nails in pastels and patterns, and told myself everything would come in time now that the demon was gone. But I never did get invited to that wedding, or even to lunch or coffee very often. The distance between me and others lingered, as did a certain darkness in my home, only observable thanks to my new wakefulness. The more time passed, the more desperately I searched for a source. If not the full body of the iceberg, then flakes scraped from the sides. Whatever it was I failed to see, still obvious to people I cared for. The more I searched, the more I found. Tiny shreds of clipped-off nail, hiding between cracks in my bathroom tiles, clustered at the bottom of my trash where they'd slipped between the bag and the can. They appeared in the most unlikely places. Days, weeks, months, years after I thought I'd swept them all up. I put on rubber gloves and scoured my house daily, never picking them up with bare hands. But they never stopped appearing, no matter how hard I searched, as if, even then, they were still growing all around me. I wonder what else I've missed.
That was Allison Mulder's Where the Demon Lives, as read by Krystal Hammond. Krystal Hammond is a narrator/writer, cancer survivor, and non-binary queer human. They grew up in rural North Carolina, nurtured by a steady diet of local Blackbeard legends and Confederate ghost stories. These nuggets of folktale and myth fostered a lifelong love of storytelling and all the drama that goes with it. They also have a master's degree in biological anthropology and adore ugly cats. Feel free to check out their narration website at krystalhammond.com or find them on Twitter at @thekmhammond. Thank you, Krystal. Our final morsel for you, a slightly bigger bite to finish off the evening, comes courtesy of Michael G. O'Connell. Michael G. O'Connell has always been a storyteller. While he is a native of the Sunshine State, his work often takes a darker turn. His short fiction has appeared online and in print, including Bacopa Literary Review, Kaidenkai, Ghost and Supernatural Stories, and the anthology Worms 2. O'Connell's poetry has been included in The Raven Review, Words and Sports, Dracula Beyond Stoker, and The Turning Leaf Journal. He is currently writing and illustrating a middle-grade horror. Dive with me once more into the darkness, children of the night, from Michael G. O'Connell's Home Invasion, a Tales to Terrify original.
The coffee we left on the kitchen table is surely cold now, but I know if we had still been living there, neither its temperature nor the kaleidoscopic oil slick floating on top of that coffee would have stopped Mama. When it came to her brew, she'd drink anything, even the Brummel leftovers from days gone by. She loved the stuff. Her coffee, that is. Now abandoned, it might be the last shred of evidence that we had ever been there. The rest being a few empty shell casings jumbled in with the marooned Captain Crunch that peppered the table and floor. Yesterday, our home had been alive with the sounds of me and my brothers romping about as if we owned the place. We didn't, of course. We squatted. That's because we couldn't afford anything. Mama didn't work. And my father? No idea. I'm pretty sure Mama didn't either. It wasn't a great neighborhood. We knew that, but we never let where we lived get us down. We had love, and laughter, and Mama. "Y'all need to stay close, ducklings," Mama had said. "There are nasties afoot creeping about in the dark." She pulled me and my brothers in tight. "I'm not much of a guesser, but I'd say there'd be a whole gang of tweakers hitting up our poor, dear neighbors as we speak. Anything to add a bit of scratch," she said with a twinkle in just one of her eyes. "Taking things that don't belong to them. Nasties for true, but don't you worry. Mama's got you. Mama's always got you." The words echoed in my head as Donnie cried, him being my youngest brother. He always seemed to be crying. He was only 2, but still. "That young'un will be right as rain," Mama would say. If Donnie lived in a perpetual state of turmoil, my older brother Chow was the opposite. That boy was always laughing. Everything amused him. At 9, Mama said he was advanced for his age. I always thought advanced meant big, but Mama seemed to have other definitions and other plans. "One day you'll be my champion," she'd say. "Not an ounce of fat on yous." Mama had a funny way of talking. She made up some words and pronounced others funny. I think it was because of where she was from. When Mama praised Chow, her number 1 son, it stifled his laughter. He'd puff out his chest and flash his teeth, trying only to smile. Rafi is another one of my brothers. His real name was Rafiq al-Salem, but we like the shortened version better. Kinda like the way people call me Gel instead of Miguel Calderon. He and I are 7 and 6. Irish twins is what Mama always called us. That would bring a smile to her face and her laughter to our ears as her belly rolls quivered and jiggled like Friday Jell-O. And the funny thing is, except for Donnie, none of us are Irish. Rafi was Mama's wonderkind, A real niño prodigio. She said he'd be famous one day. You could even be the president if you put your mind to it. He'd nod and smile, the way people do to be polite. And we were always polite, especially to Mama. Raffi hadn't told her yet, but he had much higher ambitions. One day I will be the ruler of the universe, and you, Chow Li, will be my general, he would say matter-of-factly. And you, little Miguel, will be my consigliere, El Segador, the Reaper. I wasn't all that small for my age either, come to think of it, but I liked being called the Reaper. Rafik was still struggling with how Donnie fit in, but he promised he would have it figured out before Donnie had too many more years under his belt. Mama had said something about a sister, too, but we never saw her. Last night, the night everything went down, was dark, like deep space. This time, I think we had been waiting for 3 or 4 days before all the pieces of Mama's plan were in place. Of course, Raffi had helped. Next time we moved would be Raffi's first real mission. Mama promised he could make all the plans then. Up to that point, it had been eerily calm, especially for our neighborhood. You could always count on a little gunfire and at least 1 or 2 good arguments, and that was all right with us because we had no TV. The neighbors were our entertainment, and we had gotten very good at watching. That night, the only disturbances had been a few mournful police sirens and the Murphy's dog, Banshee. Around here, there were always lots of sirens. Mama said they were God's own angry angels searching the night for wicked children. No signs of the nasties, she had lamented as we all sat in the dark staring at the window. We have to have patience, ducklings. They will come. Now, the Murphys lived 2 houses down, and Old Man Murphy had always been boastful about how he and the missus had always lived in this neighborhood. He refused to leave. It's our neighborhood, goddammit, he'd say, waving a gun around. Ain't no hooligans running me off. Sometimes he'd shoot one of those guns in the air, but everyone knew he was harmless. We'd spy on him from our windows and could hear him moping about on the sidewalk whenever the bad things happened too close to home. That old man would get in his car and be gone for an hour or so before he'd return, with another gun. He'd make a big show of taking it out and bringing it into his house, and that would regularly have us giggling. Ever since both the Murphys' cats got disappeared, he kept his dog, Banshee, inside. Before that evil old man had kept his poor dog chained to the tree in their front yard. Old Man Murphy used to tell the kids in the neighborhood Banshee was his extra layer of security. What they're doing is a crime, Mama told us. She made us promise we'd never chain up anything we might collect and keep as a pet. And she warned us about leaving them outside, too. Mama had been cooped up right along with us boys. I can't leave you boys alone. Of course, we protested, professing we were big enough and brave enough to take care of ourselves. But Mama shushed us. The trap has been set, and the nasties might come while I'm out and gobble you up. She made like she was going to eat Donnie's belly. That always terrified Donnie. He'd get to crying again until he realized she was only kidding. Then he'd laugh with the rest of us. It was because she wouldn't leave us alone that she hadn't been able to get out for food or anything. That had made us all extra hungry. Last night, Mama had Donnie attached to her hip when she came into the kitchen. Huge purple splotches had blossomed beneath all of her eyes, tarnishing the splendor of her face. I'm just a little green around the gills, boys, she'd said with a laugh that jiggled her body and shook the entire house. The wig on her head teetered like a drunken sailor. We didn't have electricity, But when she turned, the golden glow from the streetlight revealed a single box of Captain Crunch cradled in her bosom. "Gel, round up the troops," she said as she placed that box on the table. I was rewarded with a weak smile, so I rewarded her with a bunch of drooling and slobbering I couldn't help myself. I'm sure Mama meant her smile to be reassuring, but Mama's smiles didn't quite work the way they did on most faces. I bobbed my head, then jumped from the table and skittered off to find my brothers. An entire box of cereal, unopened. My stomach rumbled. By the time the three of us came back into the kitchen, Mama had Donnie strapped down in his seat. Boy, had his crying ever been so loud? I don't think he was sick or hurt or nothing, 'cause Mama said the change can be very hard on a person, especially one so green. His tiny arms had strained mightily against the leather restraints, and that box was just out of reach. That put a smile on my face. Chow seen it same as me. We giggled, risking Mama's ire. She picked up the box of the captain's treacly golden plunder and held it as if she were holding another baby. "I think this might all be over tonight, ducklings. I'm having one of my special feelings." She had said it in a sing-song way. "All we need to do is put a little more butter on her hook, eh, boys?" Raffi had just been about to say something, but Chow slugged him under the table. If Mama saw, she ignored it. My eyes had remained glued to the meager food in Mama's hands. She had almost opened the box when my stomach groaned again. The squawking noise my stomach made startled Donnie so much that he stopped his mewling. Mama cracked a grin, showing far too many teeth. Chow's laughter boomed, causing even Raffi's giggles to turn to laughter, the infectious kind. Even Donnie laughed. "Here you go, boys. I know it ain't much, but I give it to you with love," she said and dumped the contents of the cereal onto the table. "Gobble, gobble." Mama moved a small pile in front of her youngest. Sometimes Donnie ate like a dog. That was okay, especially when we were all eating. For some reason, Raffi rarely ate, but Chow and I buried our faces in the sugary goodness. Mama said we were her happy little garbage disposals. Chow and I must have needed the fuel. He had grown big and tall, while I took after Mama and grew out and out. And out. None of us noticed Mama's exit. We were too busy with the captain, crunching our way to a few pure moments of ecstasis. And in our ecstasy, we almost didn't hear the glass break in the other room. Chow and Raffi were quick to go and suss if Mama needed help. Only Raffi came back. Mama had been having one of her spells and had knocked her water off her TV tray. The jelly jar emblazoned with the purple dinosaur had been the last glass this house had to give. The cupboard was now bare, literally. Raffi stood with the refrigerator door open. It hadn't mattered because it was dark and it was nearly empty anyway. He had grabbed at the only thing in there, a nearly empty pickle jar. The pickles were long gone, but Mama liked to drink the brine. Raffi crossed to the sink with the jar and emptied it. He had been filling it with water when a hand crashed through the jalousie window on the back door. It clawed for the deadbolt. Everything happened in a blur. The pickle jar simultaneously exploded as Raffi dropped it into the sink. The noise froze me and my brothers. Then they were in our kitchen. 5 nasties, only boys themselves for true. A tall, skinny one made a show of his gun, and yet he had still screamed when he looked around the room. It was a shrill sound. I'm sure it was a shock to see us kids eating dinner. "Don't hurt my babies," we heard in a very small voice coming from the other room. Mama. "Shit!" That came from the beefy nasty. "Wasn't nobody supposed to be here?" he had said and grabbed Raffi by the neck. Chow was now coming back, but one of the other nasties had been hiding by the door. The sneaky one that he was grabbed Chow. That set Chow off and laughing like a loon. He ignored the one who had grabbed him by the neck and attacked the man who had Raffi by the throat. As they scuffled, I grabbed Donnie, chair and all. We had almost made it out of the kitchen when the one with the gun shouted, "Freeze!" And out of habit, I did. Shit, 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 shit! That was the tall, skinny one again. His words were barely audible because of the noise Raffi had been making. The beefy guy had been squeezing Raffi's neck pretty hard. "Please don't hurt my babies. I promise we'll give you everything we got." Mama again. She had been louder that time, but still not too threatening. "Who's in there?" The guy with the gun pointed it at his friend, then back at me. "Earl, you, Paco, and Thumb, get them all secured." "With what?" the one called Thumb asked. "Damn it, Thumb, you are one stupid son of a bitch. This is a kitchen. Gotta be a knife somewheres. Put him at the table with the others." I heard the one called Thumb mumble something about this being a pretty shitty bando, and how no one had supposed to have been there. Again, but he motioned toward the other room. "Eddie, you're with me. We'll deal with that." That. Mama had been called a lot of things, and quite often that was the first word used to describe her, as in, what the hell is that? It was hackneyed beyond cliché, so much so that it had become a joke among us, but I don't think at that time they had even seen her. If they did, it couldn't have been much of her. Mama liked things dark in her room. My attention had been on Raffi. I thought he should have been the one with his eyes bulging. He had been the one getting strangled after all, but it wasn't only the beefy guy's eyes ogling. His mouth had dropped open too. He looked like one of those fancy, bug-eyed goldfish at the pet shop. "What the hell is—" He almost said it, but screamed instead. I grinned as his hands had started sizzling. The stench permeated the kitchen as the acid from the glands in Raffi's neck did its job. Over the screaming, I heard clicking. It was Mama as she entered the kitchen. "My babies." The gunman turned. "Sweet baby Jesus! What the—" He screamed and pulled the trigger. If he had said it, it was lost in the gunfire. Mama took one in the neck. A bloody geyser sprayed part of the kitchen before sputtering out as Mama's skin closed around the bullet hole. The man kept firing even as Mama's bleeding stopped. Even the tiny green rivulets of blood receded before the wounds closed. I hadn't thought to count how many times that pendejo pulled the trigger, but I'm sure he pulled it many more times than there were bullets in his gun. With the clip empty, the kitchen had reeked. It was heavy with a spicy miasma akin to rotten eggs, Brussels sprouts, and a touch of burning tires. That was all Mama, but there was the smell from the gun, too. I read somewhere that the astronauts who walked on the moon said the scant lunar atmosphere reminded them of spent gunpowder. I like to think our kitchen smelled kinda like that. One day, I'd go to the moon and see for myself. No one moved. You'd have thought Mama would have after being shot so many times. Moved, that is, but she remained motionless in the doorway. A strange quiet occupied my head, probably deafened by the gunshots. A metallic ringing forced its silence into my head, giving me a dazed, lost feeling. Thinking back on it, that had been my shock. Their shock had probably started the second they laid eyes on us. Escúchame, I must explain. We no longer look fully human. By we, I mean us boys. We're still people, of course, or were, but we have been altered. Prepped, if you will. We were all in various stages of the change. Mama had been working hard, but it takes time and there is a process. She had been altering Chow's genetic and biological systems for 9 years, so in his altered state, he was no longer able to pass as he once used to. He looked much more like Mama now than the rest of us. One day, she said we'd all be identical. Identicals with tentacles. But Mama herself? She was undeniably not human, especially the back half of her. Her chassis looked something like it belonged to a giant praying mantis, but the front and top were still vaguely humanoid. The husky kind like me and Chow. If the shock of seeing her doesn't literally take your breath away, well, Mama has her gifts, and she has no trouble using them. Mama launched tentacles from under her arms and attached themselves to either side of the gunman's neck. They rippled as she fed. Her eyes rolled back so only the whites could be seen. She reminded me of El Sapo, or the little toads I used to play with when I had been a boy in my childhood in Nogales. My human childhood. From before. Perdóname, Mama, I thought. Thankfully, my dark thoughts about Mama's toad-like appearance got interrupted when she opened her mouth, because that obliterated all semblance to a toad. Believe you me, rows and rows of teeth glistened in the gloaming, but I wouldn't be using her teeth on this one. The first one is always for the wilting, boys, she said, as she had countless times before. That's what she called it. When you cut them off at the source, they wilt like flowers. The poor little monkeys. Her tongue snaked out of her mouth. She moaned in anticipation as she had fixed her tongues to the man's eyes. By that time, most of the color had drained out of him. His gun dropped as she lifted him high. His pants dribbled to the floor as he started to shrivel. There wasn't much to the man to begin with, so by the time Mama finished wilting him, he looked like one of the Murphy's cats, desiccated. Nothing left but leather and bones. A mama and a mummy, I thought and giggled. The second man had been screaming, but Chow was quick to shut him up. Back before Mama had acquired her number 1 son, Chow had been part of the Chinese counter-terror unit of the People's Armed Police. He was big and brutal, but even with all that special training, he hadn't been able to stop Mama. She had to use the tractor beam on him. Yes, tractor beams are real. Chow went limp, the same way me and Rafik and Donnie all did when she took us up into her ship. If my memory from before is still functioning accurately, Rafik al-Salem had been the Air Chief Marshal of the Royal Saudi Air Force, a real high-up muckety-muck. As for me, I'd say I wasn't all that special, but I have been told I am part of La Raza Cosmica, but I didn't feel all that special. I had been nothing more than an old coyote and sometimes smuggler working La Frontera, but I was good at what I did. That leaves Donnie. I still don't know much about him from before. An accountant, maybe? A politician? Anyway, Chow had laughed while Mama ate the second man. I guess we all did. Laughed, that is. And she finished all of him, even his clothes. Before we had been able to leave, she'd have to regurgitate the indigestibles, the metal bits like zippers, cavity fillings, and such. Bullets sometimes too, but not from us. We never used guns. What Mama did after the wilting, the hacking up part, reminded me of what a snake did. It all came up in a pellet, but if you are unfamiliar with their ways, think of a cat with a fur ball. It was weird. Perdóname, Mama, again. I'm glad she doesn't read our minds, and I still haven't mustered up the nerve to ask her about how the process works. I tried once. Girl, she had said, never play with your food. And for heaven's sake, waste nothing. Even altered like I am, the wilting and the aftermath of regurgitation and such took some kind of getting used to. By the time Mama had finished eating, the purple under her eyes had started to fade and the natural golden flush of her skin had returned. Mama said, "Those boys might have been nasty tweakers, but their own mothers would be turning over the very rocks of hell to find them. And I know that for true." She smiled and held out her arms. That had signaled the leaving part. The leaving had always been part of the process, but when she held her arms out like that, we could see the 4 feeding nodes on her chest. We all felt embarrassed, and none of us boys would let our eyes linger on Mama's nakedness. The 3 of us had attached ourselves to Mama's bulk and began to feed. She still had to help Donnie. His hooks and suckers hadn't yet developed, but he was only 2 years old. What he was getting from Mama, the nourishment, should help. It was part of the change. Thank the heavens he wouldn't be crying for a while. Mama nuzzled us as we fed. She cooed and gurgled and stroked our heads with the small tentacles she kept hidden in her gill slits before wrapping us in the cocoon of her body. We would travel as one, Mama and her ducklings. With each move, we evolved. Our minds awakened to more of the potential our bodies had locked away. We were changing. Mama called it the rapidaption. She had said, "When your rapidaption is complete, ducklings, we will have a big decision to make." We were excited, but Mama shushed us and continued. "Will we leave this place, or will we engage the beacon?" I wanted to engage the beacon because it would signal the rest of her kind, our kind, to come to this tiny speck of blue from a galaxy far, far away, and feast. Time to fly, my ducklings. And we were off. Again. Mama always traveled us while we were snugged away feeding. This time, after we arrived, I was first to wake. Mama had arranged the 4 of us by age in the middle of a floor before going off doing whatever she did when we got to a new place. This move would be my 8th. Getting older. The room had a familiar feeling. Wherever this was, a new city, maybe even a different part of the world, it would be a place where people wouldn't ask too many questions. I scratched my head, and as I looked around, I nudged Chow and Raffi. I figured I'd let Donnie sleep as long as possible. No crying. It was in the quiet I remembered the last of the Captain Crunch Mama had made me leave behind, and my stomach grumbled.
That was Michael G. O'Connell's Home Invasion, as read by Joel Simler. Joel is a bearded, flannel-wearing actor and audio producer from the Pacific Northwest. He loves to entertain by any means necessary, from life as a theater kid to playing music on stage or in the street, professional ballroom dancing, and even performing on a pogo stick. Luckily, he found his home in audiobook narration, where he records from his personal recording studio, affectionately named the Audio Hovel. Thank you, Joel. Well, children of the night, the hour is late, and we've run out of tales to tell. For now. Tales to Terrify is made possible by the tremendous generosity of our supporters on Patreon and PayPal. Incredible fans like Lestle Baxter, Amanda Carrillo, Amanda Gottfried, and Orion D. Hegre, whose generous support keeps these lights on and flickering ominously. If you're not a supporter, head over to patreon.com/Tales to Terrify. You'll find all kinds of perks, like ad-free episodes, bonus content, and one-of-a-kind collectibles. Every dollar goes back into this show, and we appreciate your support so much. Want another way to support the show that doesn't cost you a cent? Head over to Podchaser, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts and drop us a 5-star review. You'll not only put an unnaturally wide smile on our faces, but help new listeners discover our terrifying tales too. You can show your love of the show out in the world with some Tales to Terrify merch. TalesToTerrify.com/merch will take you to our TeePublic store, where we've got a great collection of creepy custom and curated designs. Tales to Terrify is produced by Seth Williams, Meredith Morgenstern, Andrew Gibson, Krystal Hammond, Spencer Disparty, and myself, Drew Sebastini, with original theme by Nebulous Entertainment. Tales to Terrify is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Join us again next week as we confront the tiny terrors of our past with more Tales to Terrify.